Hey, everybody, this is Elon from the Egard podcast, and I have an awesome guest today. I was on his podcast recently. His name is Pastor Greg. I'm going to bring him in right now. He has his own show on online television and radio, and it airs daily. And so he brought me on his podcast. How you doing, Pastor?
Hey, I'm doing great, Elon. Good to be with you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on your show. It was really nice. We had a great conversation. So I think it would be really cool if we could bring that over here for people who follow Egard to kind of catch up on everything we talked about.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great plan. So I'm Pastor Greg. I do a program called Chosen Generation Radio, where no topics off limits, everything filtered through biblical glasses, and really talking about what's happening in our world today through a biblical lens. I'm a father of 5, been married 37 years, grandfather of 3, and survivor of a catastrophic car accident where I had 17 surgeries over 5 days and died 4 times.
I think that's something super interesting to touch on. It's actually something I'm fascinated by, is people who go through those experiences. Are you open to talking about it, or?
Sure. Yeah, sure. We can do that. Sure. I'm happy to. My daughter, who at the time, one of my kids who was 15 and a half at the time, we were on our way to the studio where I used to do the program, and a truck pulled across the highway in front of us and blocked us. It was an older man that didn't know, he was disoriented, pulled out of a side driveway, and we hit him at 55 miles an hour. And I dove from the passenger seat to the driver's seat in order to save her life. And I basically became her airbag as tools came through the windshield. And I blocked them, hit my head on the steering wheel, broke my hands, broke my wrists, broke my neck, broke my back, broke the base of my skull on both sides, broke my left orbital, degloved my face, broke my left pelvis, my left hip, my femur, my tibia, my fibula on my left leg. And they said, "Mr. Young, that's your good leg." Shattered the top of my right tibia, the bottom of my right knee, and had to have a artery grafted because I severed the main artery and all the nerves below my right knee.
Whoa. Okay. That is.
It was just a little accident, Elon, just a little one.
Can I ask you a random question?
Sure.
When you were gone, did you experience anything? I've heard like people have NDEs, near-death experiences, and then I had a friend who recently had a severe heart attack and he died for a brief period of time, and he told me he didn't experience anything. So I'm always curious what people go through.
So I did, and I confirmed with one of the surgeons actually several months later that I did die on the table a couple of times, and that before they operated, their operation was on my eye, but before they operated, they spent half of the pre-op time talking about how they were trying to prevent me from dying again, because if they lost me again, they were concerned they wouldn't be able to bring me back. But my experience is it's kind of unique, I guess. I've heard some other stories similar, but mine was a little different. I was in the back of a buckboard, an old-fashioned wooden buckboard, and I was on a road that was pure white, like Revelation talks about white gold roads. I was on that road, and on either side was the greenest grass that I've ever seen in my life, and then just back from the grass was green forest, and it was the greenest forest that I've ever experienced in my life. And I grew up on the West Coast, so I've seen some pretty lush forests up in the redwoods, and actually visited the Black Forest in Germany. So I mean, I've seen some pretty lush foresting. Nothing like this, brother. Just nothing like this.
And did it feel as real as reality? Like it felt.
It felt very real, and in my mind, what I knew is that the place where I was and where I was going to see a famous physician. That's all I knew. I did not know I was in heaven, man. I didn't have any sense of that. I was going to see a very famous physician, and I was in a wooden wheelchair with slats for my legs, and they were drawing me, and suddenly on the left-hand side there was wooden, old-fashioned wooden ranch type fence, just like three log, kind of a log type style fence. And we pulled into the driveway, or through the gate entrance, and we drove in, and then the thing came in, and we drove through. Of course, they're going forward, I'm going backwards, and now I see to my right there's like a white adobe walled building with just a really kind of a nondescript roof and one window with wooden frame, and then a wooden door with some window in the top of the door. And we swung through, and I over here, I had seen that there was like an area where you would keep like the animals, like kind of like a barn. And we pull in, and then they back me up, and somebody gets up behind me and rolls me down, and they roll me over to the door. The door swings open, and now they push me through, and it was like a way station. They used to have back in the old days with the station wagons what they called a WAY station. It was kind of the place out in the middle of nowhere where you waited for the next pickup or the next coach to come through, and so that it was like a way station. And so they rolled me in. To the left there was a wooden counter, and then behind the wooden counter there were these like mail slots, the old-fashioned wooden mail slots, and in each slot there was like a sticky note where like somebody was expected to come through and pick up some kind of information. And then they rolled me back now, because there was a little bit of a space between the wall and the end of the counter, and they pulled me back in, and they closed the door. And now, from standing behind the door, two men appeared. One was a shorter man, and he was in overalls, and the other one was a little bit of a taller man. He had gray hair that went almost down to his shoulders, a little bit balding. He had on a white dress style shirt with a collar, and it was a really old-fashioned white shirt with the really thin lines, like blue and red and yellow and green, and just these really thin lines, but separated, like they were about, sorry to get right in the camera, they were about that far apart. Let me move your picture over so that way there we go. So they were they were about this far apart, and then he had on a brown vest and a brown coat, but not really brown, more of an earth tone, like a really light brown earth tone, just really warm looking, and very friendly. It felt very friendly, and so I see them. There isn't a lot of interaction. And then the next thing I know, I'm being taken out the back end of this way station, and now I'm in an infirmary. And I'm taken out of the chair, and I'm now in a bed, and the bed has wooden rails on the side. And so I look to my left, and I can see there's a case window, and there's a hallway, and I can see that there's a whole lot of activity in the hallway, people going back and forth in the hallway. And I'm lying in this bed now. And then a figure comes in that's just pure white, bright light. And they come in, and they lean over me, and they're working on me. And then they'd lean back, and they'd look at me, and I couldn't really make out any kind of a face because it was just too bright. And then they would lean back again, and they came, they worked on me, then they left, then they came back, and this happened, I think, either 3 or 4 times. And then they were done. And so now they picked me up and put me back into the chair, and now I was rolled back over to the way station. And when I came in through the back door. There was a little enclave off to my left just kind of an extension of this way station. It was a little bit bigger, bigger building. And the two men are in front of me, and we begin to have some conversation. And they mentioned to me that my father had just left. My dad was killed in a car accident 1 month before my accident.
Wow.
He was in Colorado. I was in Texas. And they said we had this wonderful visit with him. We were able to give him a full tour of, of everything up here or wherever we were. But they said it was a full tour, and that he had just really enjoyed it, and they had enjoyed him. And then they had taken him to his permanent place, and they were kind of sad that they'd had to, leave him, because they had just really enjoyed hanging out with him. Which, if you'd ever met my dad, you would know that kind of made sense, because that was just kind of the kind of guy he was. And so then we're talking a little more, and there's a commotion outside, and they said, "Oh, we need to go outside." So they opened the door and they pushed me out, and now we're outside of the building, and that white road had been right at the bend is where this way station was. And so now I look back up where I had come from, and now instead of it being just green grass and trees, there's a whole bunch of people, as far as I can see, like a sea of people lined up along the roadway. And it looked like there was almost like a red carpet that had been laid out on the road. So someone was coming down the road. I try to strain to see down the road, and I can see a figure coming down the road. And as they got closer, I could see that they were all white. They had like a white veil on top of their head, and then a white gown that went almost to the ground. And they glided. They didn't touch the ground. It was more of a glide. But Elon, it was the most regal, most elegant, most royal, most incredible being I've ever seen in my life. And they exuded love. And as they would go by, the people would just deeply bow. And you could tell, and it wasn't out of fear, it was out of love and respect and honor. And as they got closer, they got bigger. And they looked to be about 15 feet tall. And they just came gliding by, but they were the most elegant and most regal being I've ever seen in my life. And I'm kind of trying to hurry because I know we're tight.
No. Take your time. Take your time.
I've never seen a being, and the way that they moved, the way that they carried themselves, and they never touched the ground, and they would look to each side, and when they were looking, you had this sense that you had their absolute and complete attention, which was amazing in light of all of the people that were there. Yet every single person, it felt like, was experiencing that same thing. And I felt that love. And it's indescribable. The words are indescribable. And so they came, and it wasn't a fast thing. It was, they were coming very, very slowly. And then as they got past me, I mean, I was in awe. I couldn't take my eyes off of them. And then I'm watching them as they kept going until I couldn't really see them anymore. And then I turned around to look back to see what everybody else was doing. And all the people were gone. The red carpet had been picked up, and it was just the grass and the trees again. It's like everybody had just vanished.
Mm-hmm.
And then they rolled me back into the room and closed the door. And now I'm facing them. And of course, I'm like, okay, who was that? And the taller man said that was the Holy Spirit. And every day, the Holy Spirit tours all of creation and comes through all of heaven in that same way, and goes and just goes through the whole.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was incredible, man. It was incredible. And then they said, now, before you go, your father left something for you. And because of how the events took place, I didn't really have a chance to say goodbye to him when he passed. We made it up to Colorado, but he was already too far gone. And so they brought out a picture frame, and mounted on the picture frame behind glass was a certificate that looked like a family crest. And they said, your father wanted you to have this. And so they handed it to me. And then they opened the door and they pushed me out and they lifted me up. And now I was put into the back of a more modern vehicle. But I was laid on what was like a futon with, like, it was a white fur, just white fur. And I was laid on that. And then I could see looking, kind of like this, looking down my feet. I could see that there was a younger guy, and then there were these two men, and they were talking to each other. And then he got in and pulled the door closed. And as I looked down, it looked like the back of the vehicle had almost like a galley in it, like a little refrigerator, and it was kind of like it was an RV. And then he came up towards the front and kneeled down next to me. And then he gave me a shot of something, and then I went out. And that was the end of the vision.
Well, that's like a very long vision. That's not and you remember it so perfectly.
I remember every detail, brother.
So it's not comparable to a dream. It's something far more real.
Yes.
Man, I find these experiences so fascinating.
It was just unbelievable.
Do you feel like it changed you?
I feel like it gave me even more of a sense of the importance of sharing the message of the gospel. But I'd been saved for many, many years before this ever happened. 13 years before this accident, I was given 3 to 6 months to live.
Really?
Yeah. My endocrine system, my pituitary gland and my adrenal gland quit functioning.
Out of nowhere?
Well, I had a pretty successful business. I was in the Christian music area. I had another show at the time called A Dose of the Ghost, which was holy hip hop with a message. I was housed in Modesto, but I did a lot of stuff down in LA. I worked closely with the Dream Center in Los Angeles. I used to go to Tim Story's Hollywood Bible Study and did some stuff with some of those folks. I had a private investigation company, a subrogation company, a business management company, and then a recording studio and a Christian record label. And 9/11, my primary business was the subrogation business, and 9/11 killed my company. You had all those, the airlines got bailed out. The car rental companies didn't. And 2 of my insurance clients were connected to the towers. One of them carried $2 billion they were the reinsurer on it, and they took a $2 billion hit. So I lost 60%. Yeah, I lost 60% of my business and about $210,000 cash out of pocket in projects that we were working on when the towers went down. So I ultimately had to lay off 65 employees. And then I got pericarditis, and I was in the best shape of my life. At that point, I weighed about 217. I had 13% body fat. I was benching 355. I was curling about $1.25. I was working out 6 days a week. And then I came down with pericarditis. And then I had to have umbilical hernia surgery, then gallbladder surgery that turned into a liver infection, then shingles, then pneumonia, and then pleurisy.
So wait, what is pericarditis?
Pericarditis is an infection around the lining of the heart, the pericardia.
And how does that happen? Is there any explanation for it?
You know, my doctor couldn't tell me exactly. He said that, you know, it just can happen. You get a virus inside of the lining of the heart.
And that led to your whole pituitary and endocrine system shutting down.
Well, yeah, all of those things combined, that all happened over the course of about 7 or 8 months.
Whoa. And so what? And so you were told, hey, you have 3 to 6 months to live.
Yeah, I had gone to several. Everything just started shutting down, and I literally turned gray, with green and yellow highlights, and swelled up, my doctor, my primary care referred me to an internist who referred me to an endocrinologist who referred me to another internist, and none of them had an answer. I mean, they just didn't have an answer. Looking at all my tests and everything that was going on, they were like, we don't know how to fix you. And so
yep.
Well, so what happened, Elon, is I was doing the Holy Hip Hop show in addition to the other stuff that didn't stick around. And then I was co-hosting a Christian television program called The 11th Hour that filmed in Modesto, but broadcast in Sacramento. And I was lying in bed, literally had been sent home to die. And I heard the Holy Spirit tell me that I needed to go and see the executive producer of the 11th Hour television program. Her name's Sandy Swanson. And so I got up and started to get dressed. We had 4 kids at the time. My wife was like, honey, what are you doing? And I said, well, I got to go to the studio and see Sandy. And she's like, baby, how are you even going to do that? I don't think you can drive. I said, I don't know. I just know that I'm supposed to go. And so I got into the car and managed to drive over there. And when I walked in, Sandy said to me, she said, I don't want to speak this, but you look like death warmed over. Come in here. What's going on? And so I told her, you know, everything that was happening. And she said, I've got a woman who comes on my program that I have a trade with. I want to refer you to her. And she was a naturopath. And so I got sent to this naturopath and started on naturopathy.
And it cured you?
Well, it kept me alive. It didn't cure me, but it kept me alive. And so I've been taking naturopathics ever since. And in fact, I had gone to an endocrinologist here in Texas when I got here. My doctor here referred me to one. And he said, well, it looks like you test out in normal range. And I said, yeah, I'm on supplements. Oh, I don't believe in those. I said, well, take me off the supplements for 6 weeks and we'll see what happens. And by the way, I'm not volunteering to do that. Well, the accident made that happen. So when I finally got out of the hospital and was sent to the acute care rehab center, they're still pulling blood out of me and running the tests. And in one of their tests, they said something not right. So they took some extra blood. So Dr. Malloy came in one morning and he said, we're taking blood every day. And it's kind of funny because I'm like, yeah, they wake me up at 6 o'clock by poking me, right? And he said, we had to take a little extra blood. And I said, yeah, I noticed that. And he said, well, I've got kind of some bad news. He said, I know you survived this car accident, which is amazing. But he said, what I'm about to tell you, you're not going to survive this. And I said, okay. And he said, well, your adrenal gland and your pituitary gland, they're messed up. They don't work right. And I laughed. And he was like, okay, obviously you know something about this I don't know. And I said, yeah. I said, I've been dealing with this for 13 years. And he said, well, what do you do? And I told him, and he said, well, whatever your family has had you on, you bring it in and I'll sign it into our pharmacy and we'll start giving it to you.
It's a good doctor.
Yeah. And so I started back on the naturopathics. And so it helps me, but I know that I have to monitor my energy level, and I don't have the energy that, that I once had. The other piece to this, Elon, that's so interesting is that if I hadn't been taking the naturopathics that I was taking for the endocrine system, the DHEA included, and a number of other things, at 55 years of age, I wouldn't have had in my system what my body needed to rebuild to survive this accident. Wouldn't have happened.
Can you tell me what you're taking?
Oof. Okay. So I just switched about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, to this stuff that's back behind me. This is some stuff. This is a liquid superfood and fruits and vegetables called Vibe. I just switched over to this as the baseline. I take another product called Resvante, which is resveratrol in it, which is an age reversing process. And then I take extra vitamin B. I take omega fish oils 4 times a day. Then I take some stuff that is specifically designed to support my adrenal gland called ADR. It's a product that I connected with a naturopath and we moved over to that. I was taking some stuff through standard process and they discontinued, but I take that. MD Prescriptives has some stuff called Adrenal Forte, and I take that. I take another product called Cytozyme AD, which also helps to build up the endocrine system and the pituitary gland and the adrenal gland. Then I take for pain, I take extra strength Curamin. In addition, I've been able to reduce the amount of pharmaceuticals because of that. I take OPC. It's a clinical OPC, which is a grapeseed extract that helps.
Good,
yeah, that helps with my blood. I take 2 different amino acids. I take DLPA and then I take L-tyrosine. And that's to help with the connections, because in part of this, what happened to me not in the accident, but before that, involved a tear in what's called the myelin sheath, which is what connects the neuron paths in your brain. So I take DLPA and L-tyrosine to help keep that firing properly.
Okay.
What else?
That's a lot.
Yes. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. I take 27 pills in the morning, 20 pills at noon, 10 pills at dinner, and about another 11 pills at night. Plus the juices.
But if it's working, it's working.
Well, you know what? That's the whole deal. If it's making the difference and allowing me to have some functionality when other tests, I went to a chiropractic friend of mine, and he did what they call, it's a meridian time clock. They check your body's time clock, so to speak. And he said in 30 plus years, he had never seen anything like it. He said, you're supposed to have the big hand at the 12 and the little hand at the 3. He said, your clock is inverted. This was before the accident. This was 11 years ago when I first got here to Bandera. I had met him, and he said, hey, come on in. I've heard what you're saying, but maybe I can help you. I said, okay. So I went in, and he said, yeah, I don't even know how you're walking around. I can't even fathom how you're even able to get up and walk around. I know why I'm able to get up and walk around, brother. I know that it's God, and I know that the Lord has shown me. And during the time that I've struggled with these health struggles, I've been to Africa twice. I've seen the lame walk. I've literally seen the blind see. I laid hands on a man that came into a meeting on a pallet, prayed for him. The Holy Spirit told me to pray over him. He got up. We danced before the Lord. And I talked to the pastor who's now in Philadelphia, but this was in the Republic of Benin. And he said that man served in our church for 10 years, fully healed.
Wow. You've seen these things firsthand and experienced them firsthand. You've obviously had your own personal experiences.
Firsthand. And I had people say to me, how is it that God uses you and you pray for people and these people get healed, but you haven't been healed? And I said, Paul asked the Lord the same question. And the Lord's response is, my grace is sufficient for you. Relative to what we're facing today, as believers, if we don't have a faith that is ready to persevere, that is ready to deal with trials and tribulations, here in the West, man, we're kind of arrogant when it comes to that. When you think about the Coptic Christians, I do a ton of ministry, as you know, in India. Okay. My pastor over there recently sent me a picture. One of the young ladies that was a part of our church had her head sawed off because her fiance discovered that she was lower caste and Christian. Her fiance and his family cut her head off.
Yeah, that's very disturbing. I mean, Coptics, and there's Syrian Christians in Iraq. There's Christians all over the Middle East that are very, very much targeted.
Nigerian Christians right now are being genocided.
Nobody will talk about it. Nobody cares.
I do.
Well, I care too. Yeah, I mean,
I know you do. I know you do. But go ahead.
There's this weird thing in the world where there's apathy. I mean, our own government goes against Christians lately. We've seen a trend toward, the DOJ sending armed SWAT teams to people's homes if they're pro-lifers, into their families' homes where they have their kids. It's very weird, the attack on Christianity. I don't know why it's happening. I don't know why there's a connection between secularism and this hatred of Christianity. Yet it's such a major endorsement of Islam from the same progressive people who hold those ideals. There's some major hypocrisy there. And when our own government, openly, who was it? Was one of the top guys in the FBI who was in the hearing recently, and he said, I didn't know this stuff was going on. It doesn't look right that we're sending SWAT to people's homes. Did you see that hearing?
Yeah. Which is a bald-faced lie. I mean, in my opinion, I think he was lying. I think he was lying under oath. There's no way he doesn't know.
But how is that even happening? What has taken place that there's such an attack like that? And it's undeniable. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That is undeniable. There are hearings where, top members of the government are admitting that this took place. We see the pictures of the armed SWAT team going into these people's homes for no reason other than they're essentially religious Christians who are pro-life. And it's literally taken place. Do you think there's a reason behind it?
Oh, I really do. I mean, Elon, I think that first of all, we have got to take kind of a 30,000 foot view and recognize that there are just two sides in this equation. There's God's side and there's the devil. And and these folks that think that they're somewhere in the in between, but have rejected God's truth, they're agents for the enemy. They may be unawares. I'm not saying they're Satan, they're all Satanists, you know what I'm saying? But I'm saying that there are people who are operating under his influence and doing his bidding. If you want to destroy, and you and I talked a little bit about this on the program when you came on the other day. When you think about our Declaration of Independence, which declares that we have been given by our Creator life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And unlike so many that might tout the John Locke idea, where you have two hands being held out, one being the hand of God and one being the hand of man, and these things being in these hands, that's our founders rejected that concept. Our founders said, no, we are endowed. That means God's not holding it out for us to choose. It means that he's given it to us. He's put it in us. And people will say, well, if God put these things in, then how come these people do bad stuff? Because the choice isn't about life or liberty. Those are innate things. The choice is about, what do you do with them? How do you behave with the gifts that God has given you? And you have the option then to do good or to do evil. And it's our nature, because of the fall of man, because of sin, to choose to do bad, to do evil, to be selfish, to be self-centered, to be takers rather than givers, until I believe we come into an encounter with Jesus Christ. And then he's the one who transforms us by exchanging that old decrepit with something new.
Yeah, it gives you a focal point to be a better person.
It changes the person that you were. That's why that I'm to be crucified with Christ is so important for us to understand and accept. Because even Jesus, when he came out of the tomb, you'll remember that at one point when they went to reach for him, he said, no, you can't touch me yet, because the transformation has not been fully done. And yet he doesn't go to heaven, but as he walks that out, now when he goes up and he says to Thomas, put your finger here, feel the wound on my side. Well, he didn't ascend more than once. So there was a transformation of that physical body that Christ had been in into the glorious body. And that really is speaking to us about what he wants to happen with us. We are to be crucified with Christ. Our old nature has to die. And that's how we can walk clothed in the righteousness of Christ. That's how we can now put on that armor of God, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, girding our loins with truth, shodding our feet with the preparation of the gospel, picking up our shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit.
Very powerful.
Amen. Amen.
I really, really love this conversation. I want to have you back on so we could talk more about you've been through so much. You have such an interesting take on things. So, it's really, really amazing talking to you.
I am honored to visit with you, brother. And I'm honored to visit in front of your audience and to share the things, by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb is how we're going to overcome. And I believe that God's given me a testimony to try to be an encouragement, not to glorify Pastor Greg, but to glorify God.
Yeah. Well, where can people find everything that you got going on, just so we can give you some publicity here, and we'll put it down in the description in the YouTube video as well.
You bet. ChosenGenerationRadio.com is the best place to start. ChosenGenerationRadio.com. If they want to sign up for, podcasts, everything's free. But if they want to sign up for podcasts, go to the Listen. And we're on iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart, Deezer, Spotify. Where the show plays on all of those. New programs go up. We do 2 to 3 hours every day. And
Wow.
so there's new there's new programming that's going up every single day, Monday through Friday. They can watch live from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Texas time, which is Central Standard Time, same time you and I are on. And so they can watch me live at the website on ChosenGenerationRadio.com. They can also catch me on Clout Hub at Pastor Greg CGR and on Getter at Pastor Greg CGR. And Facebook decided to make me a digital creator. I don't even know if anybody's watching over there because they love to shadow ban, but we're up over there as well. So and I thank you, and I thank your audience, and I want to encourage you. God's got a plan. God's got a purpose. He has called you for such a time as this. No matter what you're doing, it's important. Keep doing it.